Attention bowlers, we are going to get started. Welcome back to Bowl-O-Rama in Portsmouth, New Hampshire for another exciting Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour match. I'm Steve Kelly on the call. This is Steve Kelly versus Bob Allard in Class A North. The match format is 5 strings and 14 points up for grabs, 2 points per string, 4 for total pinfall, with ties splitting points. Good as always to have you along with us. This match was originally recorded January 2nd, 2025, and I am providing a voiceover after the fact. So we are going to be starting out here at Portsmouth Bowl-O-Rama with Steve Kelly, the away bowler, leading off first. For those interested, I'd like to highlight a few things. First, this broadcast should have subtitles and live captioning enabled, so if you enjoy this feature, please feel free to enable it in the controls below. That's Steve Kelly with a slow-moving 9-drop mix with the 10-pin left on the deck. Also, throughout the match, I'll describe the play-by-play action and provide up-to-the-minute scoring to the best of my ability. Keep an eye on the unofficial scoreboard on your screen. It's here for the benefit of the broadcast, while the bowlers maintain the official book records separately. Scores may be subject to review or correction, and that's Steve Kelly with an early spare in the first, on the 10-pin, on the single-pin spare with wood. If you're watching this on YouTube, there may be times where I may include notes in the description where if I catch scoring errors in post-production, so please be sure to check those out. That's Steve Kelly to the right of the headpin with a 5-drop. And speaking of scoring errors, I know there is at least one for Bob Allard in the first game, so do keep an eye on that. I will try to highlight that as soon as I see it. If you're new to the ACST and Candlepin bowling in general, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to you and hope you enjoy this match. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back. Your continued viewership is greatly appreciated. Steve Kelly misses the spare but picks up the 10. With a 5 fill on the spare in the first box and a 10 in the second. That's 25 after 2 for Steve Kelly. 1 for 2 on the headpins so far. Steve Kelly on the first ball, the third box on the headpin. Pins are still mixing. It's going to be a 5-drop. The 7, 9, 10, 3, 6 are on the deck. With a piece of wood right behind the 3. Playing the 3-pin. Is in some semblance is going to be how it goes, but Steve Kelly sails right through the center, missing the target pin completely. For the third ball, for a 10-box attempt and a 5-box minimum, he'll take everything but the 7-pin for a 9 on the object pin. That's 34 after 3 for Steve Kelly. That was the first split of the match for Steve Kelly in the second headpin shot. 66% headpin completion percentage as of the third box for Steve Kelly. Starting out the fourth box now, at Portsmouth Bowl-O-Rama on lane 13. He's just slightly off to the left of the head pin on the 2-pin, dropping 6. The 1, 3, 6, 10 are on the deck. That's the right side 4 horsemen. And Steve Kelly for the spare. He's on the head pin, but too full on the head pin. The head pin sails right back through the center, leaving the 3, the 6, and the 10 unharmed. 75% of the 4 horsemen live to see another ball. Steve Kelly will take the 6 and the 10, leaving the 3 for a 9-box. That's 43 after 4 for Steve Kelly, with 1 more to go before he sits, and we say hello to our home bowler, Bob Allard, for the first time today. Kelly fires on lane 13, right on the head pin, but a little bit too full. That's a split and a 5-drop. The 4, 6, 3, 7, 10 are on the deck with no wood to help him. The 3 in the 3-6 pocket is the object pocket to shoot at. Steve Kelly shoots that pocket and takes almost everything as Bob Allard shouts, "Good offer." But the 7-pin is left on the deck, so there's no spare here. It's just for a 10-box with a 9-box minimum. Steve Kelly fires on the 7 and just barely stays on to take the 10-box for 53 after 5. Steve Kelly 3 for 5 on the headpin with 2 splits. That's the end of the first half. Past Steve Kelly is now going to key in those scores, and we're going to say hello to Bob Allard for the first time here. So visually, the scores are about to be updated. Steve Kelly's at 53 after 5. Let's talk about Bob Allard. He has a record of 33 and 51 at the time of this match. He had 6 matches played. At home, he is 4 and 24, and away, he's 29 and 27. He's bowled 4 matches away and 2 matches home. Bob Allard, opening ball to the left of the headpin, drops 7. with a split of the 7, 8, 10. Bob Allard's season average is 108.95. His home average is 112.4. His away average 105.5 with a high single of 133, a high series of 598. 17 strikes, 17 strikes, 66 spares, and 57 tens for the season for Bob Allard. With a perfect box percentage of 46%, Bob Allard takes the right corner pin and leaves the 7 and the 8. 3,234 seasonal total pins for Bob Allard. He's 3rd place in A North Division 2, and he's 12th place in the overall wild card in the hunt. Bob Allard will take a 10 box in the first frame for 10 after 1. Bob Allard has the 30th high Class A North average at 108.95. In his past 5 matches, he's taken 23 points, averaging 4.6 points per match, with 14 strikes, 58 spares, and 49 tens in those past 5 matches. Bob Allard fires on the head pin a little bit too full with the 4-pin spread eagle. 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 10. In the past 5 matches for Bob Allard, he has totaled 2,718 pins for 543.6 as an average per match. And Bob Allard sails right through the center of the spread eagle, still 4 down, 6 up. Bob Allard's head pin average per match is 30 for 50. His split average per match is 17.5. He remarked to me that he is the split king, and we'll see if that rings true today. His longest streak of matches at or over 100 is 11. That is a 6 box for Bob Allard. This is going to be one of those times where I'm going to highlight there actually is a scoring error here, and you'll see visually I'm going to be wavering back and forth between 6 and 5 on the stream scoreboard, and that was because the automatic scoreboard didn't count it correctly. And at the time when I was scoring this, I visually missed it. And I talked with Bob Allard after the fact. The score on the stream ends up being wrong. It ends up being in as a 5, but it's actually a 6 box. So just keep that in mind. Scoring in Candlepin bowling is sometimes hard, especially when you're trying to cross-reference it across 3 different systems: paper, pencil, automatic scoring at the center, and manual scoring on the stream. So mea culpa on that one. Bob Allard, I owe you a pin. And Bob Allard still working on the split here, the 5 and the 10. He didn't get his mark. Piece of wood across the 5. And then there's the 10 pin hanging out in the right back corner. He'll play the wood and sail right through the 5 and the 10 for an 8 box. So that's 23 after 3 for Bob Allard. He's currently at 2 head pin shots and 3 splits. And that's on the stream. That's me walking up to Bob Allard just talking about the second frame, because I knew at the time that something wasn't right. I thought I visually saw it as a 6, but it was a 5. And I remember Bob said he actually couldn't quite recall what the box was, but we know it's a 6 box now because the magic of, recordings. Anyways, Bob Allard getting ready to fire on lane 14. The right side lane in our pair today at Portsmouth Bowl-O-Rama. That's a 7 drop for Bob Allard on the head pin and a split. Another split for Bob Allard. He said he was the split king. So far he's living up to that claim. 7, 10, 6 for Bob Allard. It's going to be a rough shot because there's a piece of wood to the left of the 7. Got to play the 6, 10 in some way and hope he gets some sidewall action. He plays the left side of the 7 pin, hoping he can get a bounce, but he can't. 6 and 10 are left on the deck for an 8 box to 10 box opportunity for Bob Allard here in the 4th. Bob Allard fires. He'll take the 6 and the 10 for a 10 box. That's 33 after 4 for Bob Allard. 3 head pin shots and 4 splits for Bob Allard. Lighting up the stats for sure. Not necessarily sure if having a lot of splits is a good thing, though. It's kind of a bit of a luck stat in some regards, but sometimes that just happens in Candlepin bowling. Bob Allard for his opening ball of the 5th box. He fires on the head pin. It's another split, the 4, 6, 3, 10. Again, he's right on the head pin, but not getting a whole lot in terms of reward. Some bowlers, you get strikes, especially at Bowl-O-Rama, but Bob Allard has managed to somehow figure out how to get splits out of the head pin here. So that's the 3, 4, 6, 10 in this zoomed in view here. Lane 14, Allard fires on the correct pocket, nearly a spare, and the 6 pin is wobbling but doesn't fall down. A bit uncharacteristic for this house where the pins tend to fall rather easily. So it's going to be on the 6 pin, a 9 or a 10 box for Bob Allard, and he just sails to the right, hits the piece of wood behind it. 9 box for Bob Allard, 42 after 5. 4 for 5 on the head pin and 5 for 5 for splits. Quite a bit. And we were just talking about the score correction that just ended up not happening. But again, Bob Allard, I owe you a pin. My apologies on that one. So at the end of the fifth, Bob Allard has 42 after 5. And Steve Kelly has 53 after 5. That's a difference of 11. But it's still early in this first game of 5 here at the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour, this Class A North match. Steve Kelly at Bob Allard at Bowl-O-Rama in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, on the seacoast nearby the University of New Hampshire, and just a short drive away from Wallace Sands Beach and Hampton Beach in Rye and Hampton, respectively. We're going to say hello to Steve Kelly for the first time on lane 14 this time, and we'll see what happens here. Stay tuned. Steve Kelly has a record of 65 and 33 at the time of this match, with 7 matches played, a 1.97 win-loss ratio. At home, he's 23 and 19. That's the Monsters Inc. number. With 3 matches played, 1.21 win-loss ratio. When he's away, he's 42 and 14, and that's Steve Kelly with a 9 drop. The 7 pin's the only one left on the deck. Steve Kelly has bowled 4 away matches, has a 3.0 win-loss ratio at a record of 42 and 14. Season average of 118.4. At home, he's 113.2. Away, 123.6. And that is a spare for Steve Kelly, 63 and a bonus in the 6th. Steve Kelly has a high single this season in the ACST of 163 and a high series of 659. He has 17 strikes, 116 spares, and 91 tens with a 63% perfect box percentage. And Steve Kelly on the fill, pins are still mixing. Wasn't on the head pin on the 3 pin, but after all was said and done, it's a 7 fill. Steve Kelly has 4,170 seasonal total pins after 7 matches. He's first place in A North Division 4 and first place overall in the A North standings. And that is a spare on spare for Steve Kelly. 80 and a bonus in the 7th. In Steve Kelly's past 5 matches, he's taken 43 points, averaging 8.6 points per match. He's had 10 strikes, 76 spares, and 72 tens in those past 5 matches, 2 strikes per match, 15.2 spares per match, and 14.4 tens per match on average. Steve Kelly on the spare fill, the second spare fill in a row. It's an 8 fill for 88 and 7 for Steve Kelly. It's the 3 and the 7 on the deck. Piece of wood across from the 3, playing the 3 in some way will take it. Steve plays the 3, kicks to the left sidewall in front of the 7 pin, but doesn't take the 7 pin. So no third mark in a row for Steve Kelly, no 3-peat. No $50 in bonus money, as they would say on the Channel 5 show. Steve Kelly just barely stays on once again for a 10 box, 98 in 8. Steve Kelly's longest streak of strings at or over 100 is currently at 17. He is 31 for 50 average head pins per match and 13.3 average splits per match. Recently, Steve Kelly faced Steve Poulin here at Portsmouth Bowl-O-Rama in round 6. And that's Steve Kelly with nearly a strike, and it is a strike, with the 6 pin falling late for 108 and a bonus in the 9th. Against Steve Poulin, Steve Kelly took 10 points with a 642 series with a 163, a 121, a 133, a 115, and a 110 with 1 strike, 23 spares, and 14 tens, 31 headpin shots for 50, and 8 splits that match. That match can be found on 3 Ball Spare on YouTube. Kelly on a strike, on the headpin once again for the double, and it's a bit of a thin hit, a 6 drop. The 7, 9, 10, 6 are on the deck, 6 fills so far. The next ball will complete the fill on the strike. 114 so far in the 9th, pending this next ball. It's a lot of wood in front of the 6, 9, and 10 particularly. Have to play it in some way to kick over to the 7. And Steve Kelly plays the cap of the wood, and it comes down oddly enough in the back left corner. And that's going to be a 7 fill for 115 and 9. It looked like it was going to be a spare shot, but the cap of the wood deflected the ball and the pin in a weird way. So now for a 10 box, and he'll get the 10 box. 125 in the 10th is going to be Steve Kelly's opening game. For 7 for 10 on the head pin with 4 splits. This past Steve Kelly remarks, interesting shot. So 125 will be the first game for Steve Kelly. As he keys those scores in, we'll say hello to Bob Allard once again to finish off the first game here at the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour, Class A North. Steve Kelly versus Bob Allard. Bob Allard, the home bowler, Steve Kelly, the away bowler. Let's talk more about Bob Allard. In round 6, he faced Nate Lees at an away game at Exeter Bowling Center. He took 11 points with a 531 series, and that's a left side half Worcester for Bob Allard. He punched the 2 and the 8, and that is called a half Worcester. He had a 100, a 101, a 112, a 110, and a 108 in that match against Nate Lees at Exeter Lanes. And that's a spare on the half Worcester for Bob Allard. 52, and a bonus in the 6th. Bob Allard had 1 strike, 14 spares, and 12 tens in that match against Nate Lees. Bob Allard's home house is here at Bowl-O-Rama in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Bob Allard on the head pin, on the nose, a little bit too full, drops 7. It's a split of the 4-6-3. That's 59 after 6 for Bob Allard. It's going to be an interestingly tough shot on the 3-6-4. Have to play the 3-6 pocket in some way for it to go. And he had the right idea, but he sailed a little bit too perfectly down the center, right through the void, connecting with no pins. So Bob Allard trying to salvage this for a 10 box with a 7 box minimum. 59 after 6, and he punches the 3, connects with the wood, leaves the 4 and the 6 goalposts for an 8 box. 67 after 7 for Bob Allard. He has 6 splits so far this match. 6 for 7. That is a heck of a split stat. So far, Bob Allard is indeed living up to the claim that he is the split king. And he's on the head pin there on the 1-2 pocket. A thick hit drops everything but the 6 and the 9 on the deck. There's a piece of wood perpendicular to, excuse me, not the 9 pin, the 8 pin. There's a piece of wood perpendicular to the 8 pin down there on lane 13. Have to play the 6 pin in some way, and hopefully it will kick over to the left to take the 9. Bob Allard plays the 6, but he plays the left side of the 6, and it curls around to the 9. Sorry, not the 9, the 8. And Bob Allard, with the gesture, couldn't believe that. He got robbed of that spare. Unbelievable. It was wiggling and everything. Couldn't believe that shot. Bob Allard in complete disbelief that didn't go. He touched both pins. He played the left side of the 6, kicked off the wall, and it just curled around the 8. But now he's shooting for a 9 box or a 10 box. Bob Allard is here in the 8th for a potential 77. He'll kick it down for a 77 with that 10 box in the 8th. He's 6 for 8 on the head pin and 7 for 8 on splits so far. Bob Allard at 77 after 8. It's always fun when you get a shot that you think is absolutely going to be a surefire mark, and it ends up not being so. That's Candlepin bowling. Not nearly as easy as it looks. Bob Allard fires. And right down the center, it's in the spread eagle minus the 10 pin. The 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. No wood to help him. Here in the 9th frame. Another head pin shot. Another split for Bob Allard. 8 for 9 on the head pin. Excuse me, 7 for 9 the head pin, 8 for 9 on splits. Second ball sails right through the center of the spread eagle, unfortunately. No mark for Bob Allard. He's shooting for a 10 box now and a 5 box minimum. He'll take 2 out for a 7 box. That's 84 after 9 for Bob Allard with 1 to go. And at this point, the first game is insurmountable. Steve Kelly will take the first game with that 125. But Bob Allard can attempt to salvage the total early on here. Let's see what happens. Allard fires down the center on lane 13 to the left of the head pin. He drops the left half of the deck. No wood to help him on the spare attempt. 1, 3, 6, 10. 4 horsemen right side, I believe, if there are no sleepers. And Bob Allard will punch the 1 and leave the remaining pins on the deck. So no mark for Bob Allard. It's a potential 94 game. Allard fires for the 10 box. He'll take the 3 and the 6 and the 6 and the 10 and leave the 3. And that's going to be a 93 first game for Bob Allard, down by 32 to Steve Kelly's 125 of the first. So Steve Kelly takes the first 2 points in this 5-game series. And we will be moving on to the second game now, not to dwell too much on it. Bob Allard had 7 headpin shots in the first game, as did Steve Kelly. Bob Allard had twice as many splits as Steve Kelly, 8 to Steve Kelly's 4. I know it doesn't reflect that on the visual scoreboard there because at the time I wasn't able to track headpins live because I was bowling, but I keep them in after the fact. So Steve Kelly has 4 splits, Bob Allard has 8. Steve Kelly's 7 headpin shots to Bob Allard's 7. In terms of the fills, Steve Kelly totaled more, 27, averaging 6.8 per mark. Bob Allard just had 7 with that single mark. But anyways, we are going to move on to the second game. Steve Kelly, our away bowler, will start out on lane 13 at Portsmouth Bowl-O-Rama. Located in Portsmouth, New Hampshire at 599 Lafayette Road. It was established in 1956 by the Genematis family. And in 2018, the Medeiros family took ownership and undertook significant renovations to modernize and expand the facility. Steve Kelly with a 6 drop, the 1, the 5, the 8, and the 9 on the deck. And he's just off, connects with the 5, leaves the 1, 8, 9. Bowl-O-Rama offers Candlepin bowling, cosmic bowling, and an arcade called Asteroids Game Zone, and a full-service restaurant called Shenanigans. There are 22 lanes. I believe there used to be 28 pre-renovation. That's a 10 box for Steve Kelly, 10 after 1. Bowl-O-Rama hosts birthday parties, corporate events, and leagues. There's a very well-stocked pro shop here at Bowl-O-Rama. If you are in the market for bowling balls in particular, this is definitely the place to go. Bob Allard actually is the one who assisted me in getting my current set of urethane bowling balls here, and anything they have on display is generally in stock, and I really like that. Bowl-O-Rama hosted the ICBA Youth Candlepin tournaments in the early and mid-2000s. I know because I bowled in several of them. And Steve Kelly is having a heck of a time trying to get his mark here. This is the 2, 4, the 1, 2, 4, and the 8 pins on the deck, I believe. And Steve Kelly trying to clean up. He'll take a 9 box for 19 after 2. And check out Bowl-O-Rama.com for more details on everything about Portsmouth Bowl-O-Rama. They feature wood approaches and synthetic lanes, if I'm not mistaken. And it features automatic scoring via Cubica AMF BES. If you're familiar with the scoring system at places like Leda Lanes or the former Park Place lanes, you'll be right at home with the scoring system. It's automatic with manual resetting for the most part. Steve Kelly with a spread eagle, and on the second shot he tries to get the kick, but is too far to the left, leaving the 2, the 3, the 6, and the 10 on the deck. Trying to clean this up, and it will be a 9 box for 28 after 3 for Steve Kelly. First headpin shot of the game, and first split of this game for Steve Kelly, with 2 boxes to go before he sits. You're watching the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour, aka the ACST, a season of candlepin bowling among bowlers sorted into classes and divisions, calculated based on total bowlers as well as averages of the bowlers, classes A to F this season. Steve Kelly is not on the headpin. Drops 5, 1, 5, 8, 3, 6, I believe. Steve Kelly's a little bit full, leaves the 3 and the 6. Takes 3 out, leaves 2. To conclude the 4th box here, it's the 3 and the 6 left on the deck for a potential 38 after 4. And Steve Kelly misses. It's going to be 36 after 4 with that 8 box. 10, 9, 9, 8 as of the 4th frame. 1 headpin shot, 1 split so far. 8 headpin shots and 5 splits cumulatively for Steve Kelly. 1 box to go before he sits, and we switch over to Bob Allard, our home bowler. Steve Kelly, the away bowler. Steve Kelly fires on the headpin, and it's another spread eagle minus the 7. A lot of punch-outs today and a lot of splits. Bob Allard putting on a split clinic in the first game. Steve Kelly experiencing some of that here. Spread eagle minus the 7, and he's on the 3, and he reads it down for a spare. What a read by Steve Kelly. That's 46 and a bonus after 5. Finally, one of those go. So Steve Kelly sits at 46 and a bonus after 5 as those scores are about to be keyed in, and we'll say hello to Bob Allard one more time here at Portsmouth Bowl-O-Rama on the ACST. Stay tuned. Here comes Bob Allard on the headpin, and that's a spread eagle. A 4-pin spread eagle, the 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 10 on the deck. Punched out the 4 teeth in the center. No wood to help him. That's Bob Allard opening up the second game here. He takes the left side, and Takes 3, leaves 3. That's the 3, 6, 7 on the deck. Shooting for a 7 box or greater. Bob Allard on lane 14 at Bowl-O-Rama. He'll take the 6, leaving the 3 and the 7 for an 8 box, opening up the third game. Bob Allard finished the second game with the first game with 7 headpin shots and 8 splits. And that was another headpin shot and a split for Bob Allard, the self-proclaimed split king. First ball, the first pitch on the 1-3, and that's a strike for Bob Allard. Hammer strike on the 1-3 pocket. Left sidewall took the final pin. Bob Allard is at 18 and a bonus after 2 with that strike. His first strike of the match. The first strike for Bob Allard, hopefully the first of many. Bob Allard, season record of 33 and 51. He was in A North Division 3 last year. He's in A North Division 2 this year, and that's a double strike for Bob Allard. An even more definitive strike where the 10 go down almost immediately. 10 in the pit. Double strike for Bob Allard, currently at 38 before we count the bonus fills. So he has one more ball to complete the second frame of fills. Currently the second frame sits at 28 and a bonus ball. Third frame, 38 and 2 bonus balls. The second frame can be a potential 30 in a single frame if you can get a triple strike here, but Bob Allard currently has 2. If he doesn't get a strike, the total pinfall of the first ball will count towards the second frame as a fill. And that is going to be a 5 drop for Bob Allard. That's the 4 horseman left side and a sleeper. The 8 pin, if I'm not mistaken. Steve Kelly goes down to score correct that. We had a couple of score correction issues on this lane in particular with the automatic score system sometimes missing a pin. Steve Kelly caught it early. So that's 33 after 2 for Bob Allard. And this next ball will conclude the third frame with a fill of 9 on the third frame for 52 after 3 for Bob Allard. Currently perfect on the headpin. No triple strike, but he filled the double strike with a 5 and a 9. And it goes down, and the final pin goes down for a 10. 62 after 4 for Bob Allard. A very, very strong opener in the second game for Bob Allard. 3 for 4 on the head pin, 1 for 4 on splits this game so far for Bob Allard. With 1 to go before he sits already. And Bob Allard's on the head pin, nearly another strike. He drops all but the 5, drops 9. If he can take this single pin 5 pin for the spare, it'll be 72 and a bonus in the 5th for Bob Allard on lane 14. Let's zoom in on this, because this will be a good shot. Allard fires, plays the wood, takes the 5 for a spare for 72 and a bonus after 5 for Bob Allard. A 3 mark, 72, and a double strike, nearly perfect aside from the first frame.
Feast or famine would be.
And as Bob Allard remarks, feast or famine. But it was definitely a feast of epic proportions for Bob Allard here at the end of the 5th and the top of the 2nd. We're going to begin the bottom of the 2nd with Steve Kelly next. So Steve Kelly is currently at 46 and a bonus after 5. And the follow-up to that, the bonus is 7. That brings Steve Kelly to 53 after 5. That's the 1, the 8, and the 10. Just did a little jump cut because there was a piece of wood that was questionable. Bob Allard went down to check it, and it was ruled to still be in. That's why there was a little smash cut there. Steve Kelly takes 1, leaves 2, no mark. And he'll take the head pin, leave the 10 pin for a 9 box, 62 after 6 in the 6th. We last left Bob Allard at 72 and a bonus after 5, with a double strike and a spare. Steve Kelly now looking to follow up and catch up. Currently at 62 after 6, still trying to catch up to Bob Allard's half. Kelly's first pitch is to the left of the head pin. Pins are still mixing down. It looks like it's going to be a 6 drop, the 1, 7, 10, 3, the high-low jack plus the 3, and a piece of wood diagonally behind the 3. Kelly's shooting for a spare on the head pin on the 1, the 2, the 1, the 3, and the 10, but the 7 stays. No kick to the left side for the 10 in the corner, or for the 7 in the corner, that is. Kelly will take the 7 in the corner for a 10 box, though, for 72 and 7. After the 7th box, Steve Kelly has finally matched Bob Allard's 72, but Bob Allard still has a fill on that 72. So Bob Allard is effectively 2.5 boxes ahead. Steve Kelly on the left of the head pin, drops 6, drops 7, drops 8. The 1 and the 3 are down on the deck. Wasn't a head pin shot, but a nice mix sent down 8 to the pit. On the 1 and the 3 for a spare. The pitch right on it for the spare. 82 and a fill for Kelly. Steve Kelly has been bowling at Leda Lane since 1994. Some have called him the surgeon. He represented one of the Team USA teams, Leda's Mass Holes, for the International Candlepin Championship Worlds Tournament in 2024 at Leda Lanes in November. It was November 4th through November 9th. Steve Kelly's on the head pin, filling that spare with 9, nearly a strike. The 10 pin is the last one to stay up. Pieces of wood curled around it. Was almost a strike on spare, but nothing doing there. Kelly on the single pin on the 10, fires, and sails through the void. Frustrated with that shot. Couldn't believe it. Didn't hit the wood, didn't hit the pin. Candlepin is a game of inches. Kelly misses the 2nd and gets the 3rd. That's a Paul Grant special. $1 donation to Candlepins per cancer per occurrence. On every shot like that, where the 3rd ball could have been the 2nd ball, a PGS, or a 3-ball spare, you might say. 101 in 9 for Steve Kelly. Only 3 headpin shots for 9 this game. 2 splits. Steve Kelly's the left of the headpin. It's only going to be 3 headpin shots for this game. 3 for 10. And 10 for 20 overall, with 6 splits cumulatively. Steve Kelly the 5-drop, 1, 3, 6, 7, 10 on the headpin, and nearly another spare. Another one where it just doesn't go. Several of these have come down to 1 pin, just not cooperating. The 7 pin is the last one standing. So a couple of missed spare opportunities for Steve Kelly here. Some self-inflicted, some just luck-induced. Kelly on the 7 takes it again, 111 with that 10 box for a 2-game total of 236 for Steve Kelly. And that is the end of the 2nd game for Steve Kelly. Bob Allard with a 72 half plus a ball will be returning to the approaches as Steve Kelly keys in the scores. Those will be showing up on your screen in just a moment. And Bob Allard will be returning to the approaches at Portsmouth Bowl-O-Rama on the seacoast of New Hampshire. There it is, a 111 for Steve Kelly, a 2-game total of 236. And Bob Allard looks to respond. He's already quite ahead with the 72 half plus a ball. And now the thrilling conclusion to Bob Allard's 3-mark first half. Bob Allard, when he's at home, has some work to do on the record. He's 4-24 with 2 matches played. Has a positive record when he's away, 29-27 after 4 matches. 6 matches total for Bob Allard this season so far in the 2024-2025 Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour season. And oof, that is a 2 fill on Bob Allard's spare. A left side half Worcester on the 2 and the 8. So that's only going to be a 74 after 5 for Bob Allard. He's 4 for 6 on the head pin. Bob Allard on the half Worcester conversion, and he's just off to the left. He takes a few more pins out, but leaves the 1, the 3, the 6, and the 10 on the deck, so he doesn't get a follow-up mark. Shooting for a 6 box or greater. Bob Allard fires. He's right on it, runs down the right side 4 horsemen for a 10 box. He's at 84 in 6. Compare that to Steve Kelly's 62 in 6. Going to just smash cut a little bit ahead here because Bob Allard was just waiting for just some clearance so he could bowl to make sure there was just no run-ins with the kids having fun to the lanes to the left of us, so just jumped ahead just a little bit. That's why there was a cut. Bob Allard to the left of the head pin takes a left side Candlepin corner of 3. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, or I believe, roughly, are still left on the deck after 1 ball. It's a little bit hard to see sleeper pins at Portsmouth Bowl-O-Rama from a distance specifically. There we go, we have a more zoomed in view. On the remedial spare shot, he's just a little bit off. He leaves 3 on the deck.
It's the 5-6-3 that Bob Allard is contending with for a 10 box, no mark. There's a piece of wood to the left of the 5, pointing to the left side of the deck for the most part. Out on 13, he'll take an 8 box for 92 in 7. And we are just going to smash cut here once more. You didn't miss anything, just cutting out some of the idle time here, where Bob Allard was just very patiently waiting. That's a headpin shot and a split for Bob Allard on the 5 and the 10 on lane 13. 92 and 7, headpin shot and a split in the 8th. And he plays the left of the 5, no mark for Bob Allard. One more quick jump cut here just to cut out the idle time. Bob Allard fires for the 10 box. And he will take a 9 after all is said and done for 101 in 8 for Mr. Bob Allard. Bob Allard nearly has a 600 series this season. 598 is his high series so far. Just 2 off a 600. Throwing a 600 in 5 games is quite difficult. And Bob Allard on the headpin drops 6, leaves the right side check mark, the 5-6-3-10 in the 9th for a spare. You have to connect with the 3-5 pocket or the 3-6 pocket just to run down the check mark. Bob Allard fires on the 3-6 pocket, but a little bit too full. The 6 kicks to the right sidewall and does eventually take the 10, but does not touch the 5. And he's left for a 10 box opportunity in the 9th here, with the 5 pin being the last pin remaining for Bob Allard. For the 10 box for a potential 111 after 9 in the 2nd, and that will be a 111 with that 10 box for Bob Allard. That's 6 for 9 on the headpin for Bob Allard this game with 2 splits as Steve Kelly goes down just to do a quick score correction. Automatic scoring is good, but not perfect, so that's what we have to do just to keep an eye on things and make sure it all looks good. And Bob Allard on the 1-3 pocket. That was a great shot. It almost looked like it was going to be a strike, but all the pins curled around the 5 pin in the very center. The 5 pin, the king pin, but just a piece of wood perpendicular and in front of it in a nearly perfect spot. Just have to beam that wood to take the 5 pin. Just hitting kind of the lower part of the left side of that wood should be no problem. You could possibly hit it up the hill, but we'll see what happens. Bob Allard redlines it, and he takes the 5 for a spare. That's 121 and a ball for Bob Allard in the 10th. He will take the 2nd game by 10 and counting. With one more ball to go before we conclude the 2nd game here. Bob Allard. 4 marks this game, 2 strikes and 2 spares. And 3 10 boxes. And he's off to the left of the headpin, but the pins are still mixing down. Headpin falls, and that's a 7 fill for a 128 game 2 for Bob Allard. He rallies after that 93 first game for a 221 2-game total, making headway in terms of making up the deficit in the total from the first game. The deficit is only 15 between Steve Kelly and Bob Allard. Steve Kelly holds on to the total by 15, but loses the 2nd game by 17. Bob Allard 128, Steve Kelly 111. Steve Kelly went 10 for 20 on the headpin today so far with 6 splits. Bob Allard 14 for 20 with 10 splits so far this game. And that is the story of the 2nd game here at the ACST on the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. This Class A North action at Bowl-O-Rama in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Steve Kelly at Bob Allard. I'm Steve Kelly on the call, recording after the fact. It's great to have you along. We're going to be starting the 3rd game here in just a moment. And through the magic of editing, that moment was very fast. Steve Kelly starts out on lane 13 to start the 1st game. Opening ball is a headpin shot and 8 drop. A piece of wood is diagonal between the right corner and the wall, but it is down officially. That's an 8 drop for Steve Kelly. The 3 and the 6 are left on the deck standing. Kelly getting ready to fire on the 3 and the 6 for a spare. And the spare is good. 10 after 1 and a bonus for Steve Kelly, starting out the 3rd game with a mark. With 1 headpin shot, 1 for 1. No splits. On lane 13. Steve Kelly in the dark navy shirt on your left. Working on a spare, he fires, and it's a full shot, a 3-pin spread eagle with a talon. The 1, the 5, and the 8 were knocked down. The 9 is a sleeper in the back, along with the usual suspects, the 2, the 3, the 4, the 6, the 7, and the 10. Kelly versus the Talon Eagle, and he punches the 3, and the 3 phases through everything else behind it. Very Riverwalky, Wakefieldy kind of shot, considering we're at Portsmouth Bowl-O-Rama, where you don't see that kind of shot all that often, it seems. Very interesting. So Steve Kelly, with some work to do here, takes an out of 6, a 3 fill, making it 13 after 1, and the 6 box makes it 19 after 2. 2 for 2 on the head pin, and 1 for 2 on splits this game so far. Steve Kelly, box 3, opening pitch. Off it goes, and it's on the pocket, animated first ball. Looked like it was going to be a strike, but it's an 8 drop. The 2 and the 5 are left on the deck. Pretty definitive first ball drop. 8 in the pit, 2 left on the deck. Kelly fires, and the spare goes for 29 after 3. 29 after 3 plus a bonus. Kelly perfect on the head pin so far for the first ball this game. Steve Kelly, more known for spares than strikes in the ACST. On the 1-2 pocket, again on the head pin, still perfect, 6 drop. The 5, it's a right side check mark, the 3, 5, 6, 10, with a piece of wood just to the left of the 5. That's a 6 fill for 35 and 3. For the spare shot, Kelly fires a little bit too full on the cap of the wood of the 5. The 5 and the 10 go, the 3 and the 6 stay. No second mark in a row for Steve Kelly. Kelly on the 3-6. Kicks the wood, kicks the 3, leaves the 6 for a 9 box. 44 after 4 for Steve Kelly is where we're at. 1 box left to go before Steve Kelly sits, and Bob Allard returns to the approaches and lanes of Bowl-O-Rama in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, here on the seacoast. Steve Kelly with 1 box to go. Just doing a brief score correction. A little bit of maintenance on the automatic score system. Undercounts or overcounts. Sometimes it does one, sometimes it does the other. And Steve Kelly preparing the first ball of the 5th frame. Left of the head pin, but gets a decent mix of 7, the 1, the 7, and the 9, with a bunch of wood all around the 1 and the 9 specifically. Connecting with the head pin in some way is the way to go, but Steve Kelly's just off to the right and leaves the 1 and the 9. The 7 goes, but the 1 and the 9 are still there. 3rd ball for the 10 box, 8 box minimum. Fires right on it for a 10 box. That's 54 after 5 for Steve Kelly to conclude the half. And that is that. Halfway through the match with that 54 half, and now we'll see how Bob Allard can respond here at the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour Class A action here at Portsmouth Bowl-O-Rama. Bob Allard in the orange on the right lane of our pair of lanes today. That's lane 14. He's getting ready to bowl the first half of the 3rd game here. And that will conclude the first half of this match, formally, for Bob Allard. Bob Allard in his home house on the head pin. Pins are still falling. It's going to be an 8 drop. The 3 and the 7 are on the deck. There's wood all around the 3, and some in the vicinity in between the 3 and the 7. But playing the 3 pin is really the way to go. Allard plays the 3, and the wood curls around the 7, but it doesn't go. It doesn't take it. A lot of these shots today have been near spares, but the wood just isn't playing ball today. Allard will take the 7 for a 10 box for 10 after 1. headpin shot and a split on that box. Allard finished the second game with 14 headpin shots and 10 splits. He is now 15 for 21 on the headpin today, with 11 splits. A whole game of splits, at least on the books so far. And Allard, 6 drop, 7 drop, maybe an 8. The 1, the 2, and the 7 are left on the deck. Piece of wood across the 7. Playing the 1-2 pocket is the way to get the spare. And I'm sure Bob Allard knows it. Bob Allard with 2 strikes and 3 spares. And he's right on it. That's a spare for Bob Allard. 20 and a bonus after 2 for Mr. Allard. And there's the scores in case you missed it before. Just didn't get a chance to show them before we swapped over. But Steve Kelly's at 54 after 5. And 2.5 game total of 290. 1 strike, 7 spares. Totaling 52 in bonus pins, averaging 6.5 per mark. Allard totaling 40, averaging 6.7 per mark at this point in the match. Allard on a spare. Thin hit on the right of the headpin. That's going to be a 5 fill for 25 after 2. 1, 2, 4, 6, 10. It was quite a punch, but it was off to the right. And the remedial second ball is nearly a spare. He's on the 1-2 pocket, but the 6 pin doesn't fall. 6 pin is untouched. Piece of wood rolling past the 6 pin. Allard has a difficult 10 box ahead of him. That piece of wood may not play nice, but he hits the right part of it, and it does go. That's a 10 box for Bob Allard. That is 35 after 3 for Bob Allard. Had a brief visual glitch in the scoreboard here, but that should resolve itself in just a few minutes. So Bob Allard has 2 boxes to go before the end of the half. Currently perfect this half, a 10, a spare with a 5 fill, and another 10 for 35 after 3. 1 headpin shot and 1 split this game so far for Bob Allard. And he's off to the left, but drops 7, 1, 3, 6. 6 is wiggling. On lane 14. Gonna zoom in on this, get a better view. Allard on the 1-3-6. And he's just a little off the headpin, punches the 3, leaves the 1 and the 6 on the deck. No mark, but he can get a 10 box with an 8 box minimum on the 1 and the 6 pin. And he'll take the 1 and the 6 for a 10 box. Bob Allard is at 45 after 4. 1 box to go before he sits. Still perfect at the moment. Just a slight visual glitch going on with the scoreboard. Again, that will be fixed in time. That's a 6 drop for Bob Allard on the head pin. He's left with the inverted left side check mark, the 7, the 4, the 5, and the 2. For a spare shot. He fires and is just off on the 4 and the 7, leaves the 2 and the 5. Missed opportunity on the mark there. But he's shooting for a 10 box with an 8 box minimum. And that will be a 10 box and a 55 half for Bob Allard in the 5th. Only 2 headpin shots and 1 split this half for Bob Allard. But he was perfect though. Didn't leave any pins behind. He's ahead of Steve Kelly by 1, 55 to Steve Kelly's 54. At the exact halfway point of this match, 2.5 game total of 276 for Bob Allard and a 2.5 game total of 290 for Steve Kelly. Steve Kelly has a total by 14, and Bob Allard currently has the the 3rd game by 1. And we're going to say hello to Steve Kelly once again to finish the 3rd game. Kelly fires on lane 14, and he's on the headpin with a split, though, a 7 drop, 4, 6, 3. He's at 54 after 5 so far. This is going to be a difficult spare leave, and Kelly is just off of the target pin by a little bit, takes the 6, leaves the 3 and the 4. For a 10 box, 8 box minimum in the 6th, And that will be an 8-box for 62 and 6 for Steve Kelly. That's his 14th headpin shot of the match. Excuse me, 15th headpin shot, not 14th. 2 splits so far this match for Steve Kelly. And Kelly's off to the left for the first ball. Leaves the 1 and the 8 for a spare leave. There's a piece of wood very precariously in front of the headpin. Bob Allard is just checking it, and he's pretty good at eyeballing it, and all he had to do was just give it a quick once-over, but said it was good. Bob Allard works at Portsmouth Bowl-O-Rama. And will it go? Will he get the spin? The 8-pin falls very late, but that is a spare for Steve Kelly. That's 72 and a ball in the 7th with that spare, a much-needed spare to get things back on target. Especially in the total where Steve Kelly was gradually losing ground, especially after the second game. Not a complete disaster, but in order to maintain pace, it's good to get a couple marks here and there to keep things going. And on the fill, Kelly's on the 1-3 pocket. Pins are still mixing. That's a 9 fill. That's now 81 in 7 for Steve Kelly. The 10 pin is the only pin left on the deck. There's 2 pieces of wood, 1 pin rolling towards the 10 pin. In the rulebook, we always must wait for the wood to stop rolling. And now it is done. It's resting against the 10 pin to the left. And Kelly fires. And he marks it as no good. It's always the bowler's call to call fouls, and I can tell you in the moment that I saw the ball connect with the pin in the gutter, and I couldn't in good conscience call that a good spare, so I ruled it no good. That's a 9-box in the 8th for 90 in 8. Could have been a much higher game had I not connected with the gutter before hitting the pin, but hey, c'est la vie. To the left of the headpin, Steve Kelly's first ball misses the headpin, and now he's left with the high-low jack, the TV shot, the 1, the 7, and the 10. There's a piece of wood across the 10. That's the TV shot, popularized by the WCVB Channel 5 Candlepin Bowling with Don Gillis show. It was the bonus ball contest. And Kelly's on the object pin, takes the head pin, but leaves the 7 and the 10, unfortunately. It just pinballs all around, doesn't connect with the 7 or the 10. It is a very difficult shot to make, and it's great when it goes. Kelly will take the 10, leave the 7 for a 9-box. That will be 99 in 9 for Steve Kelly. 6 for 9 on the headpin this game, Steve Kelly is, with 2 splits. Final box of the third game for Steve Kelly. Kelly fires on the lane 14 on the 1-2 pocket. On the object pocket, the 5, 9, 10 is there for the taking for a spare, a lumberyard of wood all around it. Kelly fires on the lumberyard, takes the 5, the 9, and the 10. They all go. That's a 109 in the 10th, plus a ball. 1 ball to go to finish the third game for Steve Kelly. And the fill on a spare, it's on the head pin and an odd hit, but it's going to be a 5 fill, the left side diamond in the 10. That is a 114 third game for Steve Kelly and a 3-game total of 350. That will be the story of the first 3 games of 5 for Steve Kelly so far. Now Bob Allard will have his chance to catch up to that 114 Steve Kelly just threw. He's at 55 after 5. 2 headpin shots and 1 split so far for Bob Allard. Hope you're enjoying this match. Thanks for tuning in to the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. This is the best place to watch some of the most exciting Candlepin matches from a wide selection of bowlers from all skill levels. As a recap, Steve Kelly has a 3-game total of 350 with that 114 in the third game. We'll assess the totals and the leads after Bob Allard finishes his last 5 boxes of this third game. Now Allard has come to town. On the left lane, on lane 13, Allard in the orange on the 1-3 pocket. He throws on the 1-3 pocket, and the 5 and the 7 are left on the deck on lane 13. And through the magic of some editing, I just removed a little bit of an idle period in which Bob Allard was just waiting for a bowler to the left of him just to finish bowling. Bit of a younger bowler, so I just want to make sure we weren't going to run anyone over by accident. But Bob Allard does miss the spare. It was a difficult shot. He takes the 7 and then takes the 5 for a 10 box for Bob Allard. That is 65 in 6 for Bob Allard. Third headpin shot and second split of the game for Mr. Allard. 2 strikes, 4 spares, totaling 45 and fills, averaging 7.5 per mark. 17 headpin shots, 12 splits so far. 4, 6, 3, 7 for Bob Allard. That's a split, 6 drop. On lane 13, the 3-6 pocket is the operative pocket. Allard fires and pokes one out. A little bit too full on the 3. He's got the 4, 6, 7 to work with for a 10 box and a 7 box minimum. Bob Allard fires on the 4, and he takes only the 4. The 3 and the 7 are left on the deck for an 8 box for 73 in 7 for Bob Allard. 3 boxes to go before we finish everything off. And here we go. Bob Allard, opening ball of the 8th frame. And he fires to the left of the head pin. He takes a few pins out. The 5 pin is wiggling but doesn't fall down. The 1, the 5, the 3, the 6, the 9, and the 10 are on the deck. The right half of the deck is what Bob Allard is shooting at for a spare. Bob Allard on the 1, 3, 5, 6, 9, 10 for a spare on lane 13, and he fires, and he's on the 1-3 pocket, and it goes. That's a spare for Bob Allard. Hulk smash. He blows everything up on the right half of the deck for a spare for 83 in 8. Plus a ball for Mr. Bob Allard, his second mark of this game. He has thrown a pile of 10 boxes, but has 2 marks. And here's Class A North. There's 4 divisions, 4 bowlers apiece. Today, Steve Kelly and Bob Allard meet as part of the schedule. And Bob Allard, not on the head pin, goes to the right of the head pin, drops 5. 15 box in the 8th for 88. And after a brief waiting period that I just cut out in editing, he fires on the second ball, and he's on the 1-2 pocket a little bit too full. The 4, 6, 7 are on the deck for a 10 box and a 7 box minimum for Bob Allard. You can either choose the 2 on the left, or you can try your luck on the right side. Bob Allard picks the left side, but he only gets 1 pin out of it for an 8 box. That's 96 and 9 for Mr. Bob Allard. 1 box to go before he sits. Final first ball of the 3rd game for Bob Allard on lane 13. Play action on the 1-2 pocket, drops 8, leaves the 6 and the 10 on the deck with no wood to help him. We'll jump to the spare shot on the 6 and the 10, and he's just off to the left, unfortunately. Frustrated with that shot. It was just a few inches off of the 6 pin. Shooting for a 10 box. Bob Allard fires, and he'll get it. He'll miss the 2nd and get the 3rd. And had that been a spare, he could have taken the 3rd game, but he didn't. It was just another 10 box for a 106 and a 3-game total of 327 for Bob Allard in the 3rd. Steve Kelly holds on to the total by 23 and takes the 3rd game by 8. Steve Kelly currently has 4 points to Bob Allard's 2 at this point in the match, with 2 games to go before we determine who takes all of the points in the final results here at the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. Great to have you along with us. We're having a fantastic time at Portsmouth Bowl-O-Rama watching Steve Kelly challenge Bob Allard here on the tour on ACST TV. This is a season-long series of one-on-one Candlepin bowling matches between challengers organized into classes and divisions competing for playoff contention. And that's Steve Kelly down on lane 13 on the left, looking to start game 4 now. Steve Kelly went 17 for 30 on the head pin with 9 splits. Bob Allard went 19 for 30 with 13 splits. Quite a heck of a comparison. Steve Kelly's opening ball. The fourth game's on the head pin, and the pins are still mixing, still sliding. He drops 7. The 7, the 8, and the 10 are on the deck. And that is a split. A bunch of wood is around the 7 and the 8. It could split across to take all 3. And he does attempt that, but oddly enough, the pin that I thought would go, the 8 pin, does not fall. It's the only one that doesn't go. No spare for the 10 box. He'll take the last pin for a 10. For 10 after 1 for Steve Kelly. 1 head pin shot, 1 split this game. Everyone involved here, from the bowlers to the staff you cannot see, all appreciate your viewership and interest in the world of Candlepin bowling. Again, check out candlepin.org and click Go Bowling to find your nearest center. If you think you can bowl better than Steve Kelly and Bob Allard, I challenge you to go check it out. And that's a 5 drop for Steve Kelly. To the left of the head pin, the 1, 3, 6, 10, 8 are on the deck of lane 13 for a spare shot. No wood. Kelly fires, ball tails to the left, takes the back row pin, leaves the 4 horsemen right side. For a 6 box or greater for Steve Kelly on lane 13, and he fires on the 1, 3 pocket, takes them all for a 10 box for 20 after 2 for Steve Kelly. 2 10 boxes in a row so far. Hasn't missed anything. In the Candlepin world, sometimes we consider a perfect game a game where you just get no box lower than a 10 box. It's kind of a bit of a cheating way to say you bowled a perfect game, but it's also quite impressive to do that. Steve Kelly drops 5, leaves the bucket of 5 on the right, the 5, 6, 9, 3, 10. No wood. Kelly fires, and on the object pocket, takes everything with a 10. The 9 pin gets knocked down by a piece of wayward wood. But again, 1 pin is the difference between a mark and a 10 box or a 9 box or whatever it is. But that's a 10 box. 3 10s in a row for Steve Kelly. Triple X. 30 after 3 for Steve Kelly. 2 head pin shots and 1 split so far. Currently 380 game total, with a 3 game total of 350 for Steve Kelly. And on the head pin once again, and nearly the same shot. It's the right side check mark, a 6 drop. The 5, 6, 3, 10 this time. And Kelly's just a little bit off, beans the 5, takes nothing else. For 7 box or greater, the 3, 6, 10. The 3, 6 is the object pocket. Kelly fires to run him down. We'll take 2, leave 1, leave the 10. For a 9 box for 39 after 4. 3 head pin shots, 1 split this game. 20 head pin shots cumulatively, and 10 splits. 1 box to go before he sits. Here in the 5th box of the 4th game. And here we go. Steve Kelly fires, again, slightly off to the left of the head pin. The 1, the 7, the 10, and the 6. The high-low jack plus the 6, and 2 pieces of wood on the deck on lane 13. Looking to spare this up. Steve Kelly fires, smooth ball on the head pin, but the 6 and the 10 are unharmed, oddly enough. A lot of these shots today seem like they look good on paper to be spares, but they just don't really do much of anything once they're released. Kelly fires to finish off, and he'll take another 10 box, 3 10s and a 9, 49 after 5. A markless half. 4 10s is not bad, but in terms of the score, it isn't always the highest scoring thing. It's one of those situations where it can feel really good, and then you look at the score and you go, how did I only get that much? So there you go on your screen. That's 49 after 5 for Steve Kelly. Currently at 399 for the total after 3.5 games. Now we'll see what Bob Allard can do in response here on the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. And also check out Candlepin's number4cancer.com. Candlepins for Cancer is a charity organization for the benefit of folks in the Candlepin bowling community who are afflicted with cancer and need financial assistance with cancer treatments and all that. You know as well as I know that cancer is awful, and you know, you never know when it's going to strike someone you are a loved one you are close with. So please check out candlepinsforcancer.org if you want to either donate or if you want to sign up for qualifying roll-offs for the tournament series that Candlepins for Cancer runs. Al Johnson and Paul Grant run that tournament series. There will be roll-offs this January of 2025 at Riverwalk Lanes in Amesbury, Massachusetts. So do check that out. There's a form on the website you can sign up for. And check that out. Candlepins #4cancer.com. Bob Allard missing the spare on the 9 drop. The 6 pin is on the deck, and he'll miss the second and get the third. Speaking of Candlepins 4 Cancer, that's a $1 donation to Candlepins 4 Cancer for the Paul Grant special in which you miss the second and get the third. Bob Allard stands at 10 after 1 here at the top of the 4th game with a head pin shot. Here we go. Second box, first ball. On the head pin on the 1-3 pocket. Pins are mixing. It's looking good. It's an 8 drop. 2-4 for Bob Allard with a piece of wood across the 2 and the 4. It should be a nice layup. Spare opportunity for Bob Allard. Should be an easy one. Especially at Portsmouth with the way the pins move here. Bob Allard in lane 14. He fires. He gets it. Just as predicted. That's a spare for Bob Allard for 20 after 2. Perfect so far on the head pins. Bob Allard finished the 3rd game, 29 for 30 on the head pin and 13 splits. And now he's looking at 20 in a ball after 2. Next ball will be nothing but gravy for Bob Allard. It's a chance for him to take a lead here, or at least reclaim some of the total. Bob Allard on a mark. Ready, aim, fire on the 1-3. Nearly a strike. If that 4 pin had fallen into the 5 pin, it would have been a strike on spare, but that's a nice 19 box and a 9 fill for 29 after 2 for Bob Allard in the second. And it could be another layup spare with that 5 pin and the piece of wood in front of it. On lane 14. The release is good. That's another spare. 2 spares in a row for Bob Allard. That's 39 and a ball after 3. Still perfect on the head pins and perfect in the boxes so far. Lowest box is a 10 for Bob Allard this game so far. $39 and a bonus after 3 for Bob Allard, who at this point has 17 strikes, 66 spares, and 57 tens. Let's see what Bob Allard can do. It's on the 1-3 pocket, and it's a strike on spare. And that spare was on another spare. This is great momentum for Bob Allard. 49 after 3, and then 59 after 4, plus a bonus. Bob Allard is on fire. Perfect on the head pins, and a great total after 4. 59 after 4 is a great place to be in. 3 strikes, 7 spares for Bob Allard. 23 head pin shots, 13 splits. 68% head pin percentage. That is a great percentage. And if you're wondering why Steve Kelly has 0 head pins and 0 splits, that's because at the time I couldn't track those live because I was bowling. So I'm just giving you the verbal updates after the fact. Bob Allard on the double, and he nearly gets the double. He was on the 1-3 pocket. It was a great shot, but the 8 pin fell to the right and not to the left and not into the 7. That's a 9 fill so far for Bob Allard for 68 after 4 so far. Let's see if he can get the spare on strike on the single on the 7 pin. It's harder than it looks. Allard fires. Oh, he just misses the 7 by literally like an inch or so. So it's going to be a 9 fill for 68 after 4 confirmed for Bob Allard. Still perfect on the head pin, 5 for 5. And on the 7 on the retry, it's another miss the second, get the third. Paul Grant special situation for Bob Allard, 78 after 5. Far ahead of Steve Kelly's 49 after 5 at this point in the game. And that's a lead of 6 for Bob Allard in the total now. So really catching up in the total now. Now it's a foot race in terms of the total. And he has control of the game by 29, 78 to Steve Kelly's 49. So we'll see what happens from here. That is the story of the first half of the 4th game here on the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. In the back half of this match. And it's really close in terms of the total. Steve Kelly has 399, and Bob Allard has come roaring back with this 78 half with a 405 total. And he's now reclaimed the total by 6 so far. So we'll see. The total is worth 4 points, so it's quite a heck of a tug of war here. Me and Bob Allard were talking just behind the mic there, and we were discussing how in that first game he just had that wall of splits. I called it the pepperoni pizza, a split clinic for Bob Allard. Anyways, this is Steve Kelly for the second half of the fourth game. Sixth box, first ball. Here we go. Steve Kelly fires. To the left of the head pin, thin hit, 1, 5, 3, 7, 8, 10. Not a head pin shot, not really a split. Head pin is still up. Steve Kelly on the 1-3 pocket, 2 full, punches the center, leaves the 7-10, no mark. Really wanted that one to go, but punching 2 full, just punches straight back. The 7 and the 10 for Steve Kelly. 8 box, 9 box, or 10 box. What's it going to be? In the sixth, it's going to be a 9 box for 58 after 6 for Steve Kelly. Only 3 head pin shots so far, 3 for 5 in the first half, and that box was not a head pin shot on the first ball. Lane 14, Steve Kelly in the navy blue shirt on the right lane of the 2 pairs, of the 2-lane pair. And that's a split, but he didn't connect with the head pin. That's an 8 drop after all is said and done. The unique situation, it doesn't happen often where you get a split but not a head pin credit. That's if a piece of wood comes to take the head pin. Steve Kelly plays the center, plays a piece of wood. Again, shoots straight back full. 7 and the 10 are unharmed. Kelly on the 7-10 for 10 box, plays the right, and waves it off as a foul, I believe, for 66 and 7. That was a gutter ball that went straight into the 10 pin, but that does not count. Gutter balls coming out of the gutter to take a pin do not count in Candlepin bowling. For the 8th box now, 66 and 7, markless so far. 3 head pin shots, 2 splits after 7 boxes. Steve Kelly's on the head pin with a split, 4, 6, 2, 7, 10. That was a head pin shot there, but not much to show for it. Spread equal minus the 3 pin. 7, 10, 4, 6, 2. Steve Kelly fires on the 4, 7. The 2, the 6, and the 10 stay on the deck. The 6 really wanted to fall, but it stood itself back up to fight. 2, 6, 10 on lane 14. Kelly for the 10 box. He takes the 2, leaves the 6 and the 10. That is an 8 box. And lane 14, this time on the head pin, drops 7. The 3, 7, 10 are on the deck. This is going to be an interesting spare leave, and Steve Kelly just misses the object pin of the 3. And for the remedial 3rd ball, it's still going to be a 7 box for 82 and 9 for Steve Kelly. And I may have a score correction I may need to announce, because I'm just noticing this now. It seems in the 8th box, Steve Kelly was given a 9 for 75 and 8, and then a 7 for 82 and 9, but I believe the 8th frame was actually an 8 box. And I don't recall that being corrected on the paper copy either that Bob Allard was maintaining. That might have been an automatic score system issue that we just didn't catch. So, again, my apologies on that. Sometimes Candlepin scoring is just difficult. Steve Kelly in the 1-7-10 high-low jack for the spare shot. He's again full on the head pin, doesn't get the spare. And this is a no-mark game for Steve Kelly, believe it or not. Probably one of the lowest games he's had in a while in this season. That's a 9 box and a 91 10th frame. And 4th game for Steve Kelly for a 4-game total of 441. Bob Allard, with that 78 half, now really has a chance to put on the hurt. He had a 3-mark stretch in the first half, 2 spares and a strike, putting him at 78, which was quite a bit of a ways towards Steve Kelly's 91 at the end of 10 boxes. So we'll see what Bob Allard can cook up here. Again, you're watching the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour, Class A North, Steve Kelly at Bob Allard at Portsmouth Bowl-O-Rama. I'm Steve Kelly, recording narration after the fact, as it was not possible for me to do this while I was bowling. That's Bob Allard on the head pin on the 1-3 pocket. He drops 8. That's the 7 and the 9 on the deck. With 2 pins in between the 7 and the 9. Could play that wood precariously to try to split them in opposite directions to take the 7 and the 9, but it will be risky. Bob Allard chooses to try to just play the 9 to kick over the 7 and possibly kick the wood over, but he misses it entirely, so no mark for Bob Allard in the 6th. 78 after 5, he takes 1 for the 9 box. Actually almost comes over to take the 9 pin, but doesn't get it. That's 87 in 6 for Bob Allard. He is perfect on the head pin so far with only 1 split. So he's only a few pins off of Steve Kelly's 91, so he will easily take the 4th game at this point. And to left the head pin, well, he drops a few there. That's about as much as I can say about that. Not on the head pin, and not a split either. Bob Allard is just a little bit off. Ball is just angled too much to the left to collide with the head pin. And we'll see what happens here. I believe it's going to be a 6-box minimum for Bob Allard. He'll take the 3 and leave the 1, the 6, and the 10 for a 7-box. That's 94 in 7 for Bob Allard. But that is the 4th game in favor of Bob Allard, so that's 2 points for Bob Allard at this point. And he's not even done yet. He has 3 boxes to go. Let's see what Bob Allard can do here. Allard fires wild pitch off to the left. He takes the 7 and only the 7. Don't know what the heck happened there, but that ball was very off target. It happens to the best of us, though. I know I've done that countless times, so who am I to judge? Second ball isn't much better. It's just off to the right. The 1, 2, 4, 8 are on the deck for a 10-box, 6-box minimum for Bob Allard. And Bob Allard will take a few more out. That's going to be a 7-box after all said and done for 101 and 8. Bob Allard with an oddly quiet second half. Almost as if he had everything saved up for the first half and not much else to follow up on for the second half. Bob Allard in the orange on lane 13 at Bowl-O-Rama in Portsmouth, New Hampshire on Lafayette Road. Definitely check it out if you're a UNH student or you live on the seacoast. Whatever it is, check it out. And that's Bob Allard with a thin hit to the left of the head pin, drops a few. 13967, I believe, in the 9th box here. 101 and 8 for Bob Allard so far. He took the 4th game. Allard is on the head pin, but too full on the head pin. Takes only the head pin. No mark. 367 is what he's shooting at now. Allard fires to the right, misses everything. That's another 7-box, 3rd 7 in a row. I think that's lucky in casinos, but not so much in Candlepin bowling. That's 108 and 9 for Bob Allard. So after a really explosive first half of 78, Bob Allard doesn't have much to show for it in the second half with only a 108 and 9. And on the head pin, that's a good hit. He drops 7 with a lot of wood, a lumberyard down there. The 7, 9, and the 10 are on the deck. The 9 pin is wiggling. If he can spare this, he'll get to 118 and a ball in the 10th. We're going to find out what happens here. Allard fires, and he gets it. Fist pump in the air. He was proud of that one. 118 and a ball for Bob Allard with that spare in the 10th, guaranteed. Up in the game by 27 over Steve Kelly's 91. 27 and counting. And he's actually retaken the total by 4. 445 to 441 plus a ball. So 4 plus for the total. And he's off to the right of the head pin for the fill. It's going to be a 5 fill, 123, and a 4-game total of 450 for Bob Allard. He has retaken the total, 450 to Steve Kelly's 441, a difference of 9. And he took the game by a staggering 32-123 to Steve Kelly's 91. And Bob Allard is suddenly back in this match. Both bowlers have a guaranteed 4 points. We are back at a tie situation, which means the fifth game is going to be incredibly interesting and incredibly close because the fifth game is worth 6 points. So one of these bowlers could potentially go 10 points, and it could be either bowler at this point, considering the total is only a difference of 9. And with Bob Allard reclaiming a lot of the lost pins from the previous 3 games, he is really back in this match. Can't stress that enough. It's a difference of 9 in the total. In the fifth game, we reset back to 0-0, 441 to 450. Let's go. Steve Kelly and Bob Allard here in the fifth game here on the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour Class A North competitive match. All right, we're just going to smash cut to the fifth game here, just because we just had a period of literally nothing, so you missed literally nothing. Steve Kelly starts at the start of the fifth game. To the right of the head pin drop, 7-1-2-10 on the deck. The 1-2 pocket is the way to take this out. There's some wood to the left of the 1 and the 2. Steve Kelly fires on the 1 and the 2, and wow, nothing goes over to the 10. Just kind of skates off the deck. It was the right shot and the right object pins, just the 10 pin is unfazed. Kelly tries to fire direct on the 10, and that's going to be a fouled 9 box for Steve Kelly to start out. Definitely a shot that really potentially could have been a spare, but things just didn't work out. So that's a fouled 9 box for Steve Kelly. On lane 13, after the respot, second frame, Steve Kelly. 9 after 1, fires to the left of the head pin, off target, but drops 7, 1, 6, 10. Piece of wood across the 6 and the 10, and to the left of the 1. Wood still settling. And Steve Kelly's a little bit too full on the head pin. Right idea, just too full of a shot that sent the head pin directly back. Something we don't often see at Portsmouth Bowl-O-Rama, but it's been happening a lot today. And Steve Kelly will take a 10 box for 19 after 2. Steve Kelly finished the fourth game 22 for 40 on the head pin and 13 splits. Bob Allard finished with 26 for 40 on the head pin with 15 splits. Bob Allard winning the head pin shot minigame, as well as the split minigame, so I don't know if that's really better or worse. But Bob Allard had a monster fourth game. And Kelly, not on the head pin again, drops 7-1, 7-9, with wood all around it. Playing the head pin in some capacity and hoping the wood will get you a nice kick and a bounce will be how this spare is achieved. And Kelly is just the left of the head pin. It starts with hitting the object pin, of course, and Kelly does not do that. 1-7-9, once again on the retry, and Steve Kelly's off target again, not on the head pin, takes the 7 and the 9, leaves the 1 for a 9 box for 28 after 3. 2 boxes to go before the end of the first half of the final game. The final first half for Steve Kelly. And the respot of lane 13 is a go. And off we go, Steve Kelly. On the head pin and a split. First head pin shot of the game and the first split of this game for Steve Kelly. 4-6-10. Kicking the wood over is probably the best option. You can either pick the left or the right. It would seem that Steve Kelly picks the right side, but the kick just doesn't really work out. The 6 goes and everything else stays. It's the 4 and the 10 on the deck now for a 10 box. And Steve Kelly plays the wood on the left and takes the wood on the right for the 4 pin left on the deck for 37 after 4 with that 9 box, with 1 box to go before he sits and we say hello to Bob Allard one more time for the final first half of either bowler. Kelly on lane 13. The pitch to the left of the head pin once again. Only 1 for 5 on the head pin this half. Leaves a pile of pins on the deck. 1, 5, 3, 9, 6, 7, 10. No wood. Kelly's on the object pin, and it's Ah, he wanted the wood to push backwards, but the 9 and the 10 are unfazed. There's 3 pieces of wood in front of the 9 and the 10. Triple buffered wood. Kelly beans everything down for a 10, though, for 47 after 5. A markless 47 after 5, kind of continuing the pace of 0 marks. 0 marks and 15 boxes for Steve Kelly, and in this game, only 1 headpin shot and 1 split. So things are looking a little bit rough for Steve Kelly here at this point in the match, as Bob Allard came back in the total in the previous game. So we're going to see where things end up landing here. If Bob Allard can maintain the monster pace, this will be an interesting matchup here. Anyways, that's Bob Allard returning to the approaches of lane 14 and fires, wasting no time. That's a 5-pin drop and a split. The 7, 9, 10, 4, 6 are on the deck with a piece of wood across the 4 and the 7. And Allard may elect to play the wood, and he does, but he hits it too full, takes only the 4. Oddly enough, it doesn't go. So he has a headpin shot and a split on the books for the first box of the first game here. And he's going to end up taking a 7 box, taking only the 10, leaving the 7, the 9, and the 6 for 7 after 1 for Bob Allard. Steve Kelly's at 9 after 1 by comparison. And there's the scores in case you missed it. Bob Allard on lane 14 here at Portsmouth Bowl-O-Rama. He's off to the left and takes a left side Candlepin corner. Oops. Click the wrong button there. Switched between a few different scenes in the broadcast. My apologies. Bob Allard with the center diamond in the back right side Candlepin corner to contend with 3 down, 7 up. 7 up. That's a soda. The soda shot. No spare for Bob Allard. He takes a few more out on the right side. I believe it's the 1, 5, 2, 10 for the 10 box, and he'll take everything out. That was a pretty 10 box for Bob Allard. 17 after 2 with that 10 box. So far, 1 for 2 on the headpin and 1 for 2 on splits. 64% headpin shot percentage overall for Bob Allard, and totaling 83 in fills, far more than Steve Kelly's 66, and a higher fill average of 7.5. Bob Allard on the 1-3 pocket, 4-6, 2-7. No wood to help him at the split. It's going to be a difficult spare attempt. The 2-4 pocket is the operative pocket to get the kick. Now it fires, and oh, he nearly gets it. He nearly steals the spare with a piece of wood pinballing off the left sidewall to come to get the 6, but it only taps it, doesn't knock it down. Allard for the 10 box now. In the 3rd frame. That will be 27 after 3 with that second 10 box in a row for Bob Allard. 2 for 3 on the headpin, 2 for 3 on splits. 28 headpin shots and 17 splits up to this point for Bob Allard. 40% split ratio. Not ratio, percentage. 28 for 43 on the headpin today. And that's another headpin shot and another split for Bob Allard. A 7 drop, the 7, 9, 10 are on the deck. Definitely gets frustrating when you hit the correct parts of the object pins and don't get a whole lot to show for it. That is the 7, 9, 10 for Bob Allard. Spare leave on lane 14. Fires off to the left and just misses everything. Probably just thought a little bit too much about it. I think he wanted to cap the wood from an angle, but the ball just sailed way off target and tailed to the left. Allard for the 10 box, and he'll cap that wood, and I believe that was what he wanted to do, but unfortunately, nothing doing. It's going to be a 7 box for his efforts. 34 after 4, 3 for 4 on the headpin, 3 for 4 for splits. And for the 5th box, hopefully he can have something pretty big here. Other than that, it's been a fairly quiet, markless half for both of our bowlers so far. And Allard's off to the right. The 1, the 5, the 2, the 8, the 4, and the 9, if I'm not mistaken. Allard for the spare shot. Let's see what he can do here. Allard fires and takes all but the 5. Another shot where he was right on target, but just not enough leverage to take the last pin. Allard on the 5. He'll take the 5. That's a 10 box. Third 10 box at the half and a 44 half. 44 to 47. A difference of 3. Steve Kelly has the game by 3. Bob Allard holds on to the total by 6 still. 494 to Steve Kelly's 488 at 4.5 games. It's going to come down to these last 5 boxes to see who ends up winning the total, as well as the 5th game. And if someone can take 6 points, they're going to go 10 and 4. We're going to see what happens here. Steve Kelly is going to finish his match here. The final 5 boxes here on lane 14 at Portsmouth Bowl-O-Rama. And another smash cut, and we're off. And Steve Kelly is also off the headpin, that is. 6 drop, 1, 3, 6, 7. And it's going to be a bit of a fist fight for a spare. And he's on the 1-3 pocket. Again off, no spare, 1-7 for a 10 box. In the 6th, it's going to be an 8 box for 55 and 6 for Steve Kelly. It's going to really need to make some magic happen to reclaim the total and hold on to control of the game. One of those situations where if you see the win percentage graphs, it's kind of looking a little bit Atlanta Falcons-y right now. And Steve Kelly's on the 1-2 pocket, drops 8. Bit of a better shot there. Drops 8, 3-6, left for a spare in the 7th. Kelly fires on the 3-6, and it goes. That's a spare. The first spare in quite a while. The first spare in 16 boxes for Steve Kelly. That's 65 and a bonus in the 7th. Every box up to this point has been a 9, a 10, or an 8 for Steve Kelly, not counting the spare. That's only the 2nd headpin shot of this 5th game for Steve Kelly. Kelly fires to the left, and way off target, but the pins are still mixing, and stuff's still falling, if you can believe that. Wow. Bit of a circus going on down there, and that's an 8 fill for Steve Kelly, believe it or not. Steve Kelly just kind of turning around in disbelief, going like, what the heck was that? But an 8 fill is an 8 fill. That's 73 and 7. I remember Bob Allard said, I ain't saying nothing, because he watched that too. And, you know, Candlepin bowling, folks, and Portsmouth Bowl-O-Rama, sidewall and deck action. That just happens here. And Kelly's right on it for a spare. 2 spares in a row for 83 and a ball in the 8th. That spare 8 kind of got things a little bit back on track. So we'll see what happens here. Steve Kelly on a spare fill. On lane 14 at Portsmouth Bowl-O-Rama, Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Steve Kelly's off target once again. Having really a lot of trouble finding that headpin, but it's a 6 fill for 89 and 8 with those 2 spares in a row. The 8 and the 6 fill total definitely helped out a lot. And that circus spare previously really helped. And Steve Kelly really wanted to run down the 4 horsemen, but tailed off to the right. It's going to be a 10 box best or a 6 box worst for Steve Kelly. And there we go. That's a miss the 2nd. Get the 3rd. Paul Grant special situation for Steve Kelly. A 3-ball spare. A 10 box in the 9th for 99. With 1 to go, Steve Kelly has only had 2 headpin shots this game in 1 split. Currently 24 for 49 on the headpin with 14 splits. And Kelly's off again to the left of the headpin. So it will be 24 for 50 final headpin total and 14 for 50 on the splits. That's a 5 drop. 1, 3, 4, 6, 7. This could go. Kelly does spare it up. He's on right on the headpin there, correcting the headpin issues he had before. Right when he needed it. That's 109 and a bonus in the 10th. 544 is currently the 5-game total for Steve Kelly. lane 14, Steve Kelly's final pitch. Bonus ball. On the headpin, way too full on the headpin there. That's a 4 drop. There's a sleeper behind the 3. That's a 4 fill for a 113 final 5th game for a 5-game total of 554 for Steve Kelly. Hard-fought 554. And that is the story for Steve Kelly. In this ACST match, we'll see what Bob Allard can do to respond. And hey, while we are in this transitional period, I want to also just say a couple of special thanks, including our ACST committee members, including our league commissioner, Danny Finn, our Class A treasurer, Rich Lamone, and ACST statistician, Micah Imperato, Brian Hebert for some advice and direction on the stream, as always, the staff at Portsmouth Bowl-O-Rama in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, Steve Abodeely for B-roll and photography. Check him out at stabadeely.com, stabodeely.com. And of course, viewers like you, always appreciate you watching in any way or however you are watching. Always appreciate your viewership. Hope this was a pleasant viewing experience for you. If you enjoyed what you saw and want to say more and want to see more, I invite you to strike, comment, and subscribe to the multiverse of Candlepin bowling, such as this channel, 3 Ball Spare. There's also the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour page on Facebook and YouTube, the Candlepin Chat group on Facebook, Candlepin Bowling Network on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, Candlepin Corner on YouTube, at Candlepin Corner on TikTok. There's Outrun the Bear on Facebook and Instagram, Alley Chat on YouTube, Wolfman12395 on YouTube, the Candlepin Bowling channel on YouTube, the Ripping the Rack podcast, the Approach podcast. There's Tony Levesque on YouTube, Charlie Collins on TikTok. And yeah, it would be great if you could just check all of those pages out if you're into the Candlepin bowling world. Anyways, Bob Allard is looking at a gnarly split here. 7, 8, 9, 4. He takes the 9 and leaves the 4 and the 7 and the 8. Allard 3 strikes, 8 spares. 66% headpin percentage that he held on to. Steve Kelly only with a 48% headpin percentage by the end of it all. That's an 8 box for Bob Allard. For 62 in 7. He had a 10 box in the 6th. 3 boxes to go before we close out. And also check out candlepin.org and click Go Bowling if you want to find your nearest center. That's Bob Allard with a half Worcester plus a friend on the first ball. Both bowlers struggling mightily in the second half of this match. Bob Allard just has to recover 42 pins to take the total back and 51 for the game, but he has 3 boxes to do it, and this opening ball of the 8th frame isn't quite doing it for him. And he's off to the left. 1, 7, 10, 6. 6 box minimum, 10 box maximum. Allard is really going to have to go lights out. And he fires. He's on the head pin. Takes the 7, wiggles the 10, but it doesn't go. That's an 8 box for 70 in 8 for Bob Allard. 2 frames to go. It looks like Steve Kelly may just possibly squeak by with at least the 5th game and possibly the total. We'll see. Again, here's the map of the socials in case you want to see them visually. A bunch of YouTubes, a TikTok or 2, and a Facebook page. There's also the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour page on YouTube as well. And Bob Allard is off to the right of the head pin, and I think that might end up being the game unless he can really effectively get a triple strike in the 10th, but even then, it might be a bit of a stretch at this point. And Allard, no mark there, leaves the 5 pin. Wasn't for lack of trying, he was on the object pin, but the 5 pin stands tall. Allard 31 for 49 today on the head pin with 19 splits, 80 and 9 for Bob Allard. The most he can really do is 110 with a triple strike, so it will be the 5th game for Steve Kelly. And it might actually be the total mathematically, but we'll see. Difference of 33 in the game and 24 in the total. He drops 7, 10, 6 for Bob Allard. with a piece of wood across the 6. I think he understands the assignment. Play the wood on the 6-10 to kick to the 7. And Allard, he fires, and he just can't quite get the kick on the 7. Just no luck for Bob Allard. Markless this game. 32 for 50 on the headpin today and 20 for 50 on the splits. And that's going to do it, though, for Bob Allard. That 9 box for 89 in 9, or 89 in 10 for a 5-game total of 539 for Bob Allard, a 554 5-game total for Steve Kelly. And that is going to mean Steve Kelly takes the 5th game, and he does hold on to the total. So that's going to be 10 points for Steve Kelly and 4 points for Bob Allard. Steve Kelly almost giving that away by the end of the 5th, but unfortunately Bob Allard's markless 5th game, and Steve Kelly with 3 marks at the latter half of the 5th game ended up salvaging it for him. So anyways, that should be it. Waiting for the final stats just to compute here in the magical computing world. So Steve Kelly takes 10 points to Bob Allard's 4, 554 to 539. Allard took game 2 and game 4. Steve Kelly took games 1, 3, 5, and the total. Bob Allard with a better headpin percentage of 64 versus Steve Kelly's 48 by the end of it all. Steve Kelly went 24 for 50, and Bob Allard went 14 for 50. Anyways, that should be about it for us at the ACST in Portsmouth Bowl-O-Rama. Check out the socials listed here. Ripping the Rack, The Approach, Tony Levesque, Charlie Collins, and everybody else. And for Steve Kelly and Bob Allard, I've been Steve Kelly on the recording after the fact, and it's been great broadcasting this to you today. Check out Candlepin's #4cancer.com, and also check out candlepin.org to click Go Bowling to find your nearest center. We'll see you folks at the next Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. Have a great one, everybody.